on now. Okay.
We even had it facing us this time, and
Yeah.
it just doesn't. It was showing that it was recording.
Yeah, we recorded for a whole hour and 45 minutes or whatever, and then
this time it didn't even just cut off partway through. It didn't show that it wasn't recording.
Because we were recording through YouTube instead of to the, I don't have the
audio on now, but anyway, this will be bad audio, but yeah, and then went to go see if it was there, and it just says recording failed after the 2 hours of it saying that it's recording.
Yeah.
Sweet. We did it.
Here, let's do like a high five or something. You
Right.
Fun freeze frame.
Right.
High five.
With a disappointed face. Oh my
Oh
gosh.
gosh.
What in the world? Perfect.
Need to have the clap ready.
Yep.
Now we've got the clap.
Now I'm going to confuse it.
No.
Match some of these, jerk.
Garrett said not to do that.
No. Try finding these on the audio track.
Aren't you the jerk that has to match them? Yeah, okay. Just make it sure. Yeah, okay. So what are we talking about again?
Something about juicing or something.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I did that. Yeah,
Right.
I've done that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a little foreign at this point
Yeah.
because we're late to the party with the
Yeah.
the final days.
Yeah, we wanted to do
report.
like before I started, so
it was like
day
3 or 4.
4.
Yeah.
And then we wanted to do day 50, so we did like day 56 or something, and then day 100 we did like 110 or something. Yeah, so it's day, if I had kept going, it'd be day 159 rather than 150, so I'm on day 9 or 10 of reintroduction.
So what you're saying is we're consistent.
Yeah, we're always about 4 to 10 days late,
Yeah.
so here we are.
We can pretend we planned that.
Yeah. Yeah, we always miss the thing we're trying to catch. Like, okay, you did it. Let's celebrate.
Yeah.
Let's catch it. Like, now you're 10 days into reintroduction. So, yeah.
Yeah. A little weak.
I actually had to watch the video from day 4. And I watched that today. And it's funny because the whole time we're talking about, we're making this video because you're not going to remember at all what it's going to be like, what it's like at all. And it's like, that's why I'm watching this video now because I don't remember that person at
It is
all.
a really big shame, but
Yeah.
oh well. That's because you really do end up just in a completely different world. The moment that you start putting food back in, like everything changes and you can't even remember what it was like. You just spent half a year in this one place and then a day or two afterwards, and it's like, what was I feeling like then? What was what were my plans?
And
like,
your body starts to tumble you in, so you're like, well, all I care about is eating all of this food and getting to eat all this food. Why would I ever juice feast?
For it?
Why did I even like doing that?
Yeah, exactly. It's
I also feel
strange.
like my personality tends towards that. I feel like an annoying person sometimes because people will be like trying to get information off of me, but like my answer is always like, I'm really loving what I'm doing right now, and it's the best thing, and it's like that's always what my answer is going to be. So I'm not the kind of person that's going to be like, I got off of juice feasting and it's terrible and I shouldn't have gotten off, and like I just don't ever feel that way about anything I do. So I'm pretty annoying to talk to, I think.
We can end up leaning a little too far on that side. You know, it's generally normal to lean too far on the regretting things side and everything, but then if we're guilty of any sort of crimes, it would be being really good at not doing that, but then like overdo that too, you know, like and kind of forget the other reasons that it would have been good to do the more fastidious thing or whatever, that sort of deal. But, so now we're a number of days into it, and it's hard to remember what what it even was like coming off of it.
Well, watching that first video, like I had some sort of viral thing that was just like hibernating and then coming out in sores in my mouth all the time, and then when I got into juice feasting, it immediately started to like travel up my trigeminal nerve, so like shooting down, like I could feel there was something, you know, trigeminal neuralgia starting up on one side, and then it kind of came down further, and then it started like, you know, pain through my cheekbone and stuff, and then eventually it came to like my skin, and it was just came out in a way, and that resolved, and then I've had maybe like on occasion once or twice or whatever, like a sore or something in my mouth. Wow. But that totally changed like night and day. And then like temperature regulation was much better. So I definitely look at, so I did 150 days. That's 5 months. I started with a 100-day like goal. And then when I thought that I could go forever, and so I did 100 days, and then I was going to do 50 and then keep doing 50 if I felt like continuing on. So after the 100, I pledged to do another 50, and I did it as best as I could, I guess. So when finishing 100 days, I definitely felt like I should continue doing this. It's really a benefit. I'm just getting started, kind of feeling like I'm just getting all this stuff out of me. I'm just getting kind of stabilized in the juice feasting and stuff. And so it was easy for me to commit to like the next 50 days. But right around 120, which was hard to see when I was in it, because it was also the Christmas holidays. We had all the family around. They were making all the foods that we've always eaten for holidays. It was super stressful. There was just so much going on. Like December is always like super intense, and then January is usually for me like pretty kind of depressive. Not like depression like you think of, but just like
calm down.
Yeah, it feels like winter, like you're just holed up in your house, and you feel like you can't ever get enough done or get enough sleep or whatever, and you just see you're not really like doing the things the opposite of the summer, where you're going out and the sun is shining and you just are living life. And so I really thought that it was like those things that were triggering me to like start eating a little bit of cashew cream and things like that. But looking back on it now, I was glad that I stuck through that and I didn't just go into like full binging on everything when I was, in that state, given, like, I'm glad that I didn't at 120 get off of the juice feast during all of that super stressful, difficult time, because I would have medicated with food. So I'm glad that I didn't. And I'm also glad that I didn't, because I really learned the lesson looking back, that the mentality that like doing juice feasting for as long as you possibly can, and if you can do that for a year, that's some amazing great feat, is like, I have a lot of respect for Sarah, who did a year, and her page, The Year of Juice. I have a lot of respect for that, but in reality, the reason why she was able to do that, and the reason why she needed to do that, and she wanted to do that, is because her body couldn't digest. It couldn't digest any food. She was on a feeding tube and had been for a long time. And even after the year trying to introduce food, it's been really rocky for her to even just introduce fruit and stuff to get her body to digest. And I was definitely in that situation. And it was hard to balance between like, look at me, I can keep going, everybody's so amazed, versus like, if my body wants to eat, that's the goal, right? Like, because if I can't digest food, so I have to juice feast, at the beginning, or during the first interview, one of the things that I had forgotten the intensity of was my desire not to eat. I remembered that I had that, and I remembered that it was a strong thing, but like talking in that interview was me like constantly, I was like verbalizing, like begging, like, please save me, like help me do juice feasting, because I don't want to eat anymore. Like it was just like, we'd just be all sitting around talking, and I would just feel this bubble up of wanting to be like, Garrett, please, for real, like, please, I can't keep eating, I can't keep doing it, like, stop, please help me. And I had kind of like forgotten about that, and that was really at the core of why I was doing it. So it's like, I said I'd do 100, so I did 100, and that was great, and I'm going to keep going, and I'm going to go to 150, and then I said I would do it, and I'm going to keep going, and it's going to be really amazing that I could keep going, and all of that. And I kind of really got detached from like what I was really trying to achieve, which was feeling healthy in my body. And I think around 120, like the benefits and the difficulties started to kind of outweigh the benefits. I was just unable to stop myself from consuming little bits of cashew cream. I was chewing and spitting a lot of food. I had gotten down to probably like 130 or 125 or something, and my body was like trying not to lose weight but still losing weight, and I got down to 120, and luckily it like stabilized again. I never dipped down below 120.0 amazingly enough. Like my body refused. It would, at the end it kind of would go up to 122, but it would never go below 120.0. And since starting reintroduction, I have this strong intense, it feels like pregnancy hormones. It feels like nursing, my obsession with food, my capacity to eat food, my capacity to like stuff myself full, and then like an hour later, needing more food and being in the kitchen and cooking myself something else and like eating more food, and just like the way that I could be like full, just physically full, and it still felt so good, just like my body being like, we're gaining weight now, like I'm gonna put on some weight now, and it feels good to do so. And it's like, I don't have any negative feelings with the way that it's like energetically draining or all of those things. It's like I had myself in that last 30 days really, like, looking back on it, it feels like against the grain of what was really like best for my body in a way. And so now it feels like my body trying to like just get back to like an equilibrium, put some of that weight back on, and just believe in abundance again,
Right.
just convince my thyroid to produce the hormones that said,
Right.
we're going to get enough, sustenance.
Well, and just the same way that where you were at near the end of the juice feast and feeling like you could do it forever and that this was the only thing, it's worth not taking all the conclusions and things you're now having to deal with and come up with, and where your body is kind of rationalizing where you're at now necessarily as gospel, that things may still change and all that, because as I brought up so many times and stuff, like I experienced the same thing, the super struggling suddenly at the end of my 60 days. And it kind of makes sense where it's like Sarah essentially got near the end of her year when it was like, okay, it's time for me to quit. And then you got to the 150 days, 120 days or so until you started running into that. And I feel like for me, it was like around day like 40 or so that then I started chewing and spitting stuff out and like, it was just a little experiment that I could do. And hey, I can not swallow stuff and like, kind of experience what I'm trying to experience, but then like finding like I couldn't stop, and that sort of thing that then cued me in on like, okay, I'm going to go ahead and stop at 60, that I don't want to keep putting up with this. Great. Hope you enjoy the dog wailing in the background. I don't think we can do much about that. Unless you want to hear us screaming too on top of it. That would really help.
Go away.
He's literally standing like 3 feet from us through the glass door right there. Great.
We don't like live here for the past 10 years.
Right. But, oh yeah, he's barking at us, huh?
Yeah, he's barking at us.
Quit! What are you doing? Anyway, and I mean, I would imagine like I was a bit healthier than you were when I started doing it, and then you were healthier than Sarah was when she was doing it. So it does, and there's especially that whole thing, I may have mentioned it in the last thing, but where it's like once I stopped my 60-day juice fast, and I was after a couple 30-day ones earlier on in the year and whatnot, that it's like I'm now to a point where it doesn't matter. I can have months of refeeding, 3 months where I don't do any fasting or whatever, and then I go into another juice feast, just a couple days or, however long it would be, knowing that like I want to keep cleaning out, and it's like pretty much immediately I don't have any grace period of it being easy, or after a couple days then suddenly it gets easy and it's smooth. It's like it's pretty much like if I'm really backed up, then a day may be fine and 2 days may be fine, but then within that I suddenly am right back in an instant to that 60 day, the 40 days, the end of the 60 days thing, where it's like I'm in deep detox instantaneously and I just can't really live my normal life while doing it. It's fine because all that compulsion is I don't even want to do all the things that comfort me. I don't want to even play video games to distract myself. I don't want to do anything productive either. And then, but what I do want to do is compulsively roll my legs out and stretch and work out and all this stuff. And like, well, cool. That would make sense as part of healing yourself and detox and all this stuff. But it's like, I pretty much instantly am going too fast in the healing process to live my life at the same time. And so it feels a little bit like, that's what you're running into and everything. But the big thing is like, it is worth being wary. And of course it may also be worth making the mistake yourself if that is a mistake and whatnot, just of the coming out of that 60 days and whatnot. I literally kind of went through the same thing where it was like, hey, I did a good job and then now I'm ready to refeed and whatnot. And I stayed on raw, but I literally ate, cashew cream salads. And again, like you're saying, where it's like, you've got so much space in your intestines now and everything, the compulsion is to stuff that back up. And so then it's like within an hour of eating all that you want and getting all these flavors and all these things that you wanted, then within an hour you're like, oh man, I can do it again, and it's going to be just as delicious, and I'm ready, you know.
But I think that there's like, you know, if you look at bodybuilders, like professional athletes who are really fit or model, they bulk and cut. You have to, your body's in one mode or the other. Either it knows that it's in a bounty and it can produce muscle and it packs on fat, and then you put yourself in a cutting mode where you reduce your caloric intake, but you also reduce how much life you're living and how much you're asking
but I don't
of
know
your body,
that it had to be as much. I'm not positive either direction of if cutting and bulking is totally necessary. You know, I kind of waffle between whether it is something that makes sense or not, but I know a lot of people that is the default bodybuilder thing and stuff, but that I don't know that it needed to go as extreme as it was, because I literally got as fit as I've ever been in my entire life at 60 days.
Scary thin.
And then within a month, I was as heavy as I've ever been and fat.
So the way that I see it, though, is
off of salads, off of raw food and everything. Like, that's how big this compulsion to just keep. And that by that time I had gotten so big, it still felt the exact same. I still wanted to just keep eating. I had to go back to like just kind of fasting and healing myself and just getting into some form of moderation.
I mean, the way that I look at it, you know, I've been talking about that probably in all of the interviews, but the idea, like Jordan Peterson says, like, you know, burning away the dead wood, and that if you do that for the first time you're ever doing that, you are made of so much dead wood that you're not left with nothing but a husk, and that's terrifying, you know. And so that's what, you know, through this experience I've held in my mind is the idea of, you know, people when they do long-term juice feasting and they feel good and they can tell it's beneficial to their body, but they're so thin, and so other people are looking at them and freaked out, and they can see, you know, I can see that I'm too thin, you know, but it's because you're a husk now, you know, you've gotten rid of all of the dead wood, and there wasn't really much left under there, and you've trimmed back some extra stuff, right? But it's because you didn't regularly trim dead wood, right? But then part of that, like that dynamic where you're left as a husk, I think that it makes sense, especially like, you know, that was your most extreme juice feasting, and then that was your most extreme. So if it was like your most extreme cutting, you know, trimming the dead wood and leaving you as a husk, then it's your most extreme like place from your body to bulk, you know, for your body to say, hey, you're asking me to work out, you're asking me to do these things, I'll make muscle, I'll do that, but we're gonna like put out, you know, like we're gonna do this really intensely. And that's what it feels like to me. Like, it feels like my body saying, you've been asking me to build muscle, you've been asking me to have, I've used my, you know, all this energy, I've done all this stuff, now I'm ready to put some stuff back and on.
But you don't necessarily have to like grind immediately out of your juice feast or whatever and start stacking muscle or whatever. Like, I would imagine a more calm, you know, moderated, non-addictive approach and everything could just be like being at your bottom and then like just slowly putting on the right kinds of weight and not having to work out way too much. And
that would make sense if you didn't want, you know, ups and, you know, peaks and valleys. If you didn't want swing this way, swing all the way back that way, you can't pull it so far back this way. If you did like, you know, 3 weeks of juice feasting, and then you did like 2 weeks of mild bulking, and then you did 2 weeks of juice feasting and 2 weeks of mild bulking, then you probably wouldn't ever be pushed to the place that you were pushed after 60 days, and I was pushed after 150 days, or even 120 days, where your body's like, you've pushed it so far and held it so far for so long that, you know, like,
but now... It was also experimenting, though. The only reason that I went as far as I did was I was justifying it. I was thinking that it was fine. I was telling myself that, like, you know, I've kind of earned it. I'm only eating raw foods anyway. It's clearly not going to be a problem.
It's part of your journey and how you got to where you are now, which in my mind defines it as not anything that you did wrong.
No, I know. Thus, like I said, may have just been a learning experience and everything, like having to test that limit and stuff. But I don't know that it had to swing as far back as it did. So we're just talking about best practice and that sort of thing. Best practice doesn't have to include spraining your ankle, you know, but you may sprain your ankle doing whatever, you know, work you need to do, you know, sort of thing. But I think it probably is a form of messing up that I went that far. I probably could have bulked up half that much. And had I known, had I been giving myself this advice, had I had somebody who had this exact experience and was telling me, this is what's up ahead of you, this is what you're doing to yourself, then I could have still enjoyed refeeding and getting new food in and stuff, and then been able to just get a handle on it a little bit quicker and just be ready to start.
I mean, maybe, but you know, I don't know. It's hard to decide whether,
well,
really
you're
is.
about to have a second experience for us and see, you know. So if you end up in a place where you feel gross again within a month, or if you start getting control of it within a couple weeks,
I can feel it, and it's like I welcome that because you know, like I'm not trying to argue with you. Yeah. I'm just like I can feel it. Like I can feel going to bed. Like I've had, you know. First off, I don't know. I've never had anybody talk about this except for me and my mom, but because she just did 3 weeks and we broke at about the same time. But both of our experiences with this have been once you start refeeding and you start putting food into your body, like really eating like real food regularly, you are having like real solid major bowel movements like every hour or 2 hours. And it's like, how? You know, like why? You know, you're just constantly putting food in and then you're just going and having another bowel movement and going and having, and it's like all the time in between bowel movements, you're just like, I'm gonna have to poop again. Like it just never stops. And so I think it kind of peaked out. And I think it like I didn't have any of the herbs that they recommend to help like shrink things back down or whatever it is. So I didn't do anything like that. But and it feels like maybe there was a part of it. It's like it allowed my bowels to pack in so much more, and then it was like trying to get it all out as well while I was packing in more, and it just allowed like more to back up into my system than should have been humanly possible. And so it's just constant. But I had like finally like one night where I got up, not last night but the night before, where I was up from like 3 to 5 a.m., had 3 solid bowel movements within that period of time. Like my body was just like, we're going to keep moving. And that was after having several bowel movements, like, you know, all throughout the day, but then in the evening before bed. And then when I woke up at like 8 a.m., because I'd slept, you know, I had been awake in the middle of the night, so I turned off my alarms and woke up at about 8 a.m., ready for a solid large bowel movement. Like it just never
I think that
stops.
may still be kind of arguing for a more controlled approach and stuff, just where
I mean, I plan to be controlled about it.
I know. Like, not that means it's mentally or emotionally possible, you know, but that because specifically the idea supposedly is that you are supposed to essentially pass your meal within the 24 hours, you know. Fruit can go through you within like 6 to 12 hours. It's definitely within
24 hours, but I've been eating an ungodly
amount
of food.
Exactly. So it's like, you know, essentially without juice feasting or whatever, that it's like you're supposed to be able to decidedly not eat your next meal until you've had a bowel movement to show you that like that 2 meals back has now passed and then it's ready to
I still don't, and I think part of it is the constant intake from the juicing, but like I don't even know what a meal is. Like I just am eating constantly. So like I said, I can make a huge meal and sit down and eat, and then like an hour later I'm like, I guess it's time for more food, you know, like because I am cooking it, you know, like so.
Well, and also just it's a good point, just a reminder thing of the most of that impulse is probably the old hunger signals and stuff and things you're supposed to be looking out for.
I think that it's difference. The constantly moving stuff through thing, and
that's
like
what I mean though. That's the old hunger signal. That intestinal distress is not a sign of hunger, and that is what we have as our one cue for hunger in our current age. That it is a very different watering, not in the front of your mouth like you're watching a Burger King commercial, but in the back of your throat like you're a starving person, you know, sort of thing. But you're somebody that's actually hungry.
I'm definitely learning that it's so much more complicated than that, because like I said, this reminds me, the only time I've ever been like this was during pregnancy and during breastfeeding, and it is a completely different world. Like it is a completely like rolling out of bed at 2 a.m. and walking to the refrigerator, and you're just like you're opening things and scooping them into your mouth, and you're like, this is the best salsa I've ever tasted, you know. Like I would pour sunflower seeds and mustard in my hand and just like lick it off of my hand, and it was like the most euphoric experience. But it's like that has nothing to do with like even having the capacity to evaluate whether or not you are hungry in any particular way or anything like that. Like I had, you know, especially at the beginning of especially at the first interview that I was just watching, where I was talking about, you know, I can tell that when I feel hungry, and you know, that I'll just do an enema and I'll move things through. And it's like, number one, I'm so packed full, so uncomfortably packed full, that the idea of putting water in there to try to get anything out is like, no, you know, like, but it's like, I don't want to. I want to put food in my body, but
that can be a trauma compulsion just as much as it could be you wanting to say almost absolutely that it's a hunger signal. Like that still can be you've neglected this trauma compulsion so long, and now it's getting engaged, and it's like nothing else matters. Okay, this is time, you know, sort of thing. I want to stuff back up.
Those arguments like feel like they indicate in some way that it's like, it's not just as acceptable as true hunger, or I don't know.
Well, it wouldn't be. I mean, that would be the point. Is the goal is to get outside of trauma relationships with food.
Yeah, I find it interesting to note things like I have no interest in my binge foods from before. Like I would go to Walmart and just like grab a cream donut, or my favorite Domino's pizza or Taco Bell, or I have no interest in food like that, and I have no interest in food that's like not vegan. I make like quesadillas with Earth Balance butter and corn tortilla and a vegan cheese, but if I was here and there are flour tortillas and regular cheddar cheese, and that I would always like, make tortilla and cheese from our childhood and like binge on when I was in a bingey place, when I was in a trauma place, I would have no interest in that because I really like the vegan version that I'm eating. It's like a cleaned up
step, it's a tier higher, it is, to me, better, but it's not, is that.
I think that on a level that's happening, but I think that in another way, there really is this demand in my body that's like, I want carbohydrates and fats together.
Right, which is a no-no for food combining anyway. Like that is the that compulsion, that addiction thing is the.
Okay, but like I said, with pregnancy, like studying food combining as far as like, okay, so what I'm trying to reference is Trim Healthy Mama, where they take, for any meal that you have, you can either have high carb and low fat, so less than 5 grams of fat and like up to 20 grams of carbs or whatever, and then, or you can have a high fat, low carb, so only 5 grams of carbs max, but you can have X amount of, fats, or a fuel pull. So the idea is that like you're using carbs as your source for this meal and not fat, or because you're not hitting the threshold of over 5 grams, or you're eating fat, the fat as a fuel, and you're not hitting the threshold of carbs for your body to try to use that as a fuel. You use fuel pull if you don't go over 5 grams of carbs or 5 grams of fat. And so that's a fuel pull. But if you were to be pregnant or nursing, or you were trying to, actually gain weight, then you do want to combine those two. And what I learned with my pregnancy, where my body was determined to pack on an indescribable amount of weight and then, produce a 6.12 pound baby, there is a particular kind of hunger, and there is a particular demand from particular, bacteria in your gut and stuff that take the control out of your hands, and insist on, because the mentality that you should never combine, high fat and high carb and stuff comes from a particular, American mindset that you should be lean and thin and not have too much fat on your body, and
there's
these
a lot
things.
Of reasons for it. I mean, it's bad on your blood sugar. The fat coats the insulin, and then your insulin can't uptake the sugar, so then you produce more insulin.
Yeah, I mean, and again, like that's a mentality. Like that doesn't mean that you being any random human being with your body working the way that it does, like, dad doing Whole30 for 30 days and feeling absolutely no benefit from it besides losing weight, and then immediately going back into standard American diet and feeling absolutely no difficulty from doing it that way, So, like, well, what I'm saying is, anytime you take a study and you say, okay, this study proved that this works, what you're actually saying is it proves that it works enough on enough people that we can say that it works, but there's still a bunch of people that it didn't work for, that it didn't work for, or that it did something wrong for, or, that were included in that study that we're not even talking about,
Sure, but that doesn't mean there's not a truth that's being dug up somewhere.
Sure, and we know those things and we agree with them, but I think people get in a lot of trouble by thinking that this study said that thing is how this works, and having absolutely no consideration for the fact that it didn't work for that person and it didn't work for that person.
But specifically, there wasn't no consideration for that. There's really intelligent people who've been.
But if you're talking to people that you're making a video for, and they keep trying to do the thing that everybody says is how things work, and yet it's not working for them, or.
People use that same argument for against raw foods and against there being a diet that makes sense for everybody, but every animal on the planet has a species-specific diet. They all eat essentially along the same way for each different species, and then humans are the only ones that were over here like, no, but some of us just need to eat all meat all day, and then, some of us actually need some fruits and vegetables, but fruits and vegetables are really bad for some of us, but all of those are secondary needs that are developed from us being so impossibly ill in our modern world. And if we are healthy enough, then our species-specific diet gives you the things that you need. But if you're compromised from living a lifetime of eating the wrong way, and your parents lived, ate the wrong way and passed on genetics, then yeah, you are probably compromised, but that doesn't necessarily mean that some people need to eat different in the long term, sort of thing, that we all still can and should be able to get to a place where good foods, healthy foods, are essentially the same foods for everybody on some level. Like, there's obviously going to be like a tiny bit of variation or whatever, but ultimately, just like every other species on the planet, there is a species specific diet for us that nourishes us all the same. Were we not to have these secondary needs that we have, that we try and get around by changing our diets, by trying to supplement with tons of supplements, or supplementing by having other animals eat things and they process it and turn it into things that we need and then we eat them, and that sort of thing. That if your body was highly functional, then your body would be able to create those things itself off of the proper foods, rather than this, trying to put an intermediary in between us and everything. But
well, kind of. I mean, I think that one of the only ways that we've been able to develop our consciousness and our society and industrialization and all of that stuff is because we do let cows graze all day, and then we eat the cows, and it's much more efficient, because otherwise we'd be grazing all day to be able to meet our caloric needs, and
but we're not that kind of animal, so we would never be needing to do that. Like bonobos don't need cows to graze all day so that they can get enough nutrients for what they're doing.
Bonobos eat all day.
They're just attracted to fruit and stuff, and they eat
all day.
Possibly. I don't know. I don't know how long bonobos eat during the day.
Well,
fruit is high in calories, so they probably don't have to eat
3 meals so that they can, they don't intermittent fast until the evening and just eat dinner, so that they can spend the rest of their time being functional in society and being social and raising children and working for the betterment of society, and I guess,
but fruit is high calorie anyway and everything, and has all the vitamins and minerals and all the stuff that you kind of need. It's not
sure, and if you're making enough money and you can have it prepared and delivered to your door, and
right. I'm not saying society is ready to deliver to you, or that your body's healthy enough to do that for you in the right place, but that there is a proper way. That I don't. We came into that from the combining, fats and carbs argument and everything, that even when you're talking about pregnancy, and that was directing you in a very real way, and you've logged that in your mind as, so therefore that's what hunger feels like, and therefore it was trying to get me to eat the right things, or that there was a justification for it.
So maybe that's where we fell off, because that's not at all what I'm saying. I can feel the end of this road, but I can tell that having gotten right off of the juice feast and having kept myself that last 30 days in this uncomfortable stasis against what my body needed, and continuing to lose weight when my body didn't want to lose weight anymore. I can feel it, that I can tell intuitively that my body is trying to right something, and I can feel that it's starting to wear off though. I'm going longer between eating, and when I'm eating that last thing that I'm eating, that I'm like, why am I eating this? And I'm like, this isn't as rewarding anymore, so it's starting to wear off. Sure. But I think that you were saying in the interview, in the first interview, and I don't remember exactly what you were referencing, but you were talking about, being accepting and having grace for what's happening when you're binging and all of that stuff, because you're paying attention and you're gathering information and stuff, and you're actually enjoying it, and all of that. And so there's that dynamic, and it's like, I have so many times had the opportunity to be like, whoa, I'm out of control,
what's wrong with
this
me?
Isn't gonna stop, and I can't, this is what I do, and all of that stuff, and it's like, it's been 5 days, and I've gained 7 pounds, and I'm glad to have gained 7, but I've never in my life ever thought it would be healthy to get below 135.
Right.
Whoops.
Oh, well, there goes lighting.
And I got down to 120, and I don't want to be 120 pounds. I don't like the way that I feel like I have to apologize for myself, those kinds of things. So that doesn't tell me, I don't do that because of other people. I do that because I'm uncomfortable with something, and that feeling of looking at myself and feeling like this isn't, my ideal, at all. And I'm putting up red flags in other people's minds. I've had people worrying about eating disorders and stuff. And it's I can see that. I can see,
exactly. Running into that at the 60 days and stuff, oh my gosh.
Yeah. But I mean, it's not true. There is a part of you that feels like at least you're okay and you're not getting fat, and maybe if you just continued shrinking that you'd earn a little bit more time before you really have to wait. Like that exists, like those things are in there.
But,
and it's
but
like
refeeding slowly and accurately is still
no,
different
of course,
than
and I wish
us
that
binging,
I wish that there was ways to live multiple realities, and I could have stopped at 120 days and seen seen if I had this reaction, a whole week of, and maybe 2 weeks or whatever, but like, but I can feel, and I welcome it. I welcome it wearing off and the feeling of being too full, tired, bogged down, becoming uncomfortable, because right now it's not uncomfortable. Like it wasn't uncomfortable for me to be hungry all the time, on the juice feast. That wasn't uncomfortable in any way until that last 30 days. So it's the same way now, is it's like I'm not uncomfortable being super full, all the things that I was so happy to get away with. I was listening to that interview, and it's like, I remember going to the potluck and seeing everybody else eat and being like, oh, I'm so full. And I'm like, I love not feeling that, and now I'm feeling it so extremely, and I love feeling it.
Really?
Like, I just love my belly, and it's like,
I didn't get that at all.
Really?
Like,
I'm loving
so
it.
far, our experience was the exact same, but then, like, I still just felt by the time I was jamming myself up, I could tell that I was jamming myself up.
Maybe because you were jamming yourself with raw foods, and I'm jamming myself with drugged foods, like the tortilla and cheese
enough
with butter and that I'm hitting the dopamine, and that I'm getting that. I mean, not to say that the cashew cream doesn't do that pretty well,
It does, oh, man.
But I mean, I just.
It's an experience to have.
When you say you did the 40 days and then to the 60 days, and like I did 120 days, and then I went to 150 days. You know what I mean? Like, it's stretching out what you did, like pretty, like doubling it. More than doubling it.
Right.
And it feels right. Like it feels okay and healthy and appropriate to feel the way that I feel. Like it reminds me of when I was pregnant. Because it starts to get really full in there and uncomfortable, but it's right, like
it's really strange.
And I mean, maybe it's easier for me to feel that way because I recognize these, aspects of my body saying, I'm sorry, but like, we're gonna do this now, and like,
but even during
it's
your
for the good of
pregnancy,
mankind,
it wasn't right though, because it was explicitly all the worst foods, and it was overdoing it, and it was.
But I mean, the pregnancy, number one, it was the worst, literally the worst foods, but. One of the main problems that I had with the pregnancy is I fought it so hard. The first 3 months, I mean, so when I got pregnant, I was the fittest I had ever been. Like very lean, very muscular from being a Beachbody coach for like 6 months or whatever. Like for me, like very muscular, and very fit, and like working out all the time. And I was eating super, super clean. I was eating like just ground turkey, I think it was just ground turkey. And like zucchini and squash diced up and sauteed with onions, and that was like cauliflower, mashed cauliflower or something. It was like just that's all I ate. Like it was just very extremely clean, maybe eggs or something. And I loved it. I didn't have a problem with it. I didn't have food addiction. I didn't have to worry about anything. Like everything was really great. And so I did that for the first 3 months of the pregnancy, and I was like, I've got this in the bag, And then I went out to eat, and I had a little bit of Mexican food, and I felt so much better. Like I didn't even realize that I hadn't been feeling good, I felt so much better, and I was like, well, you eat this crappy food and you feel better when the the drugs hit, and then it wears off and you feel like death, and it didn't happen. I felt amazing for 48 hours, and I just would just glow like Bugs Bunny with hearts around his head when I thought of the Mexican food that I ate. It was just like, it reminds me of it reminds me of when you eat something that makes you sick, or you get sick, and your body goes, well, maybe it was the thing that you ate, and now anytime you think of that thing, you get like nauseated thinking of the thing that you ate that came back up, whether it was the thing that poisoned you or not. And it was like that, but the opposite. It was like, remember that thing that you ate? And that's why we feel just so magical.
Yeah, that is weird, because that isn't something that I've experienced. It's always been, as soon as I start going the other direction, it's explicitly the drug effect of like, I feel that way while I'm eating it, and maybe for 30 minutes or an hour afterwards. And then after that, it's like I get to regret it for the next couple days. Not even like a mental, emotional thing, but literally like, oh, now my back is locked up a little bit. And now like, okay, I really enjoyed it for those couple of moments, but now I know that I want to do that less.
Right, and that's how usually my experience has been, besides pregnancy, nursing, and now like this experience. The only other time that I felt that way. And it's like, those, so then it was like, I just ate one thing that I wasn't supposed to. You know, I just went out to Mexican food and ate too much, and like, you know, that I shouldn't have, just that one time. And then I wasn't going to do that again, or like, okay, maybe once every couple of weeks or whatever. But then I would start to like crave things. So I would be like, well, clearly I'm hungry, right? So clearly I need fat. Clearly I need, you know, like, so I would make a menu of healthy foods, you know, my healthy foods that I was eating, of the things that I was, you know, the fats and the stuff that I was craving, avocado and all that. And I would eat, and I would still be craving, so I would eat some more, and I would eat some more, and I would be miserable. I would be meaner than a bull, and I would be completely out of control until I finally gave in and went and had, it would be the 2 weeks or, you know, whatever, and I would have the thing, and I would eat a bunch of food just to make sure. And so it started to happen like that I would put in so much healthy food, and it wouldn't at all change that craving. And so then I would put in like 2,000 calories of healthy food and then go eat like a giant cheeseburger at Wendy's on top of it. So that's when I started like, just my weight just like skyrocketed, and I started gaining weight so fast because I refused to listen. Like, I refused to believe that I could actually need a Wendy's hamburger, you know, that I could actually need Taco Bell, you know, like, no, I would rather die, you know, like, it was like, well, I enjoy that, you know, like, enjoy destroying your marriage, and like, hating everything, and like, not wanting to live anymore,
feeling ashamed of yourself.
Until it got to the point where he would leave and literally not come back until I told him what I was craving, so he could bring it to me, so that he could come in and put it inside the door and leave, and then I could call him and be like, okay, I feel so much better, I'm so sorry. But I would try so hard to eat the healthy foods that I was doubling my caloric intake. It's what happens every time I do protein shakes or something. You know, I'm like, I'll just eat this instead. And I consume it, and it doesn't at all change the fact that, like, I'm going to go eat food now, and then I just, like, start gaining weight really rapidly because it just adds to my caloric intake. But yeah, there was, like, you know, that experience and this experience. But I can feel that it's starting to wear off, you know, and I welcome that, because it's like, that's what's scary about it, is this could go on forever. You know, I could be like 200 pounds by the end of the year, you know? And it's like, I'm trying to just trust myself. I am trusting, you know, like I'm not trying in a way that I'm not able to. Like, I am just living in this trust and just letting because there is also a dynamic that I have recognized that feels like my body is a child that I have been mean to and restrictive
to be able to listen to it and give in to what it's
and I've always clamped down on it, and so I've been like, okay, fine, it's my binge weekend, so what do you want? You can have pizza and you can have donuts. Okay, we're gonna have all this stuff and eat all this stuff, and then I feel like terrible and I regret everything, and you're never allowed to make decisions again, and you're just not having any food tomorrow, you know, and I just clamped on all this stuff. And it's like it feels like there's also this rebellious spirit inside of me coming from my body that's like, okay, so I just ate all of this food, and it's like, well, I'm gonna go to the fridge and open up, you know, tortillas and cheese, and, you know, and it's like, so are you gonna cut me off yet? You know, like, and I'm like, no, if you want more food, you know, like, go ahead, we're here. I'm gonna enjoy it. I'm gonna enjoy every bite, you know, like, I'm on for the ride, and it's like, I'm earning my body's trust back, that I'm not gonna be like, you know, like, no, you messed it up, and you ate too much food, and you've done it wrong, like.
Yeah, that is a helpful analogy. I'm sure anybody, if you've been paying attention, like, to kids and everything, that's exactly what they do. Where it's like, if you've shown that you're willing to be cruel to them, even if it's for some reason that you feel like is justified or whatever, that they're doing something completely wrong, if they did some particular thing, that it's like, just the fact that they intrinsically know, you know, this right brain yin child thing, you know, tells them that it doesn't matter whatever you think in your left brain analytical, you have the information that they were wrong in that moment or whatever. They know that you cutting them off and, like, really, you know, you separating yourself that much from them, that you were able to be mean and be cruel to them, that they know that they want to test that in you. You know, it's like, then you get the problem children sort of thing, where it's like, then they're going to explicitly be attracted to the wrong things, or specifically something related to that wrong thing, and they're just going to go over and they're going to be like, do you hate me now? And then, like, it's a test, you know.
It's also like, you know, specifically like unschooling or whatever. Like, you have a kid, you put them in school, they've been through, you know, all of the conditioning that goes with school, and then one day you decide to unschool them. And you end up on the blog or on the, you know, the mom unschooling pages, and you're like, so how long am I supposed to let him play iPad all day, you know, and stuff? And it's like, the child is like, on one end balancing that pendulum, but on the other end being like, I don't trust you that I'm allowed to be free. So what if I push past all the things that you said, that got me in trouble before? I'm going to have to keep doing that a few times and not get in trouble before I believe you, and I mean, with my body, I have through my life pulled calories, away, ripped it away from my body so many times and forced it to binge just to survive, so many times. And then also, it's shut down and not had any interest in calories, and then it binged just to keep alive and all of that. So in a way, it's, it feels a lot like my body saying, are we really in abundance? Are we really allowed to eat? Are we, I need to pack on some weight, and are you going to clamp down on me and pull everything away from me again? And, and I'm watching all these people, on the juice feasting pages trying to, go into juice feasts or, trying to get off of it. So they're messing up. So they're going to go back into juice feasting or fasting or, whatever. And it's like, in my mind, it's kind of been like, well, yeah, if I get out of control, then I'll just do that. And it's like that part of my, intuitive body being like, are you going to do that to me? I'm just getting used to the idea that I get to do this, that I get to eat food. Are you going to rip it away from me? Are you going to rip it away from me if I make one more quesadilla, And it's like, you don't need it, but have as much as you want, because, next week it's going to be different. The hormones are going to be different, I'll be at a different weight and things will fit differently. And, I'll probably react to being overly full differently and everything's going to shift. So we're just going to keep going with, wherever I am right now and not make a decision for, for any kind of future. So,
And I want to at least, clarify briefly just that idea, so it doesn't sound like juice feasting itself or fasting is something where you're just going to hurt yourself and then you're going to refeed and all that other sort of thing that, because me mentioning my longest one that then was when I re-ate within a month had made myself as big as I ever was, sort of thing that it still was absolutely a complete shift in my life and a complete change where then as I was recovering myself back from refeeding back to bigger than I'd ever been or whatever, within 2 months, I literally then got back down to being fit probably within another month, I guess, just 1 month, that back down to being about as fit as I'd been and everything. And it still was you're pulling up ancient stuff, that ancient garbage that you've just filled yourself up with and everything. All that fresh stuff that you throw back on top of it is loose sand. It's much easier and quicker to pull back off and take care of yourself. And that literally was the first time in my life that I'd ever had abs. And that was after being an athlete for my entire life and being relatively vain and just feeling hey, well, I'd like to just not look like a puffball when I look in the mirror. And I'd like to, and being focused on nutrition. So I'm eating really, really awesome and fighting myself on foods and all this other stuff while doing college level and then Olympic level training and all this stuff. And I'm still flabby and gross looking in the mirror. Something's wrong. And I'm trying to whatever. And it was literally the first time that I ever looked fit in the mirror was
not after the 60 days. You're talking about after you lost weight.
At
after
the 60 days.
Oh, at the 60 days.
So the 60 days was, and I think it was maybe the 30-day one that it was hey, I technically actually have abs in my body. That it's not just that genetics, some people just have weird looking guts or whatever. Instead it was oh, actually you can see perfectly defined. Okay, interesting. So all that, oh no, it's fine. You're too tall. Tall people don't really get like that and all this stuff. And then it was the 60-day one that it was I was diced, and it was interesting. Okay, fair enough. And then I screw it up over the course of a month. And then within that month or two, I was back to being fit and having abs and stuff okay, and then I kind of lose it again after a number of weeks or a month and then kind of get it back. And it was this cycle that was getting closer and closer to where now it's an interesting new thing as of the last 4 months or something where it's now even when I'm screwing up the most, when I'm having the hardest time and I'm fighting myself on my food and finding that I just screwed up again for the 4th time in a week that I keep thinking, okay, well, I'm just going to indulge tonight then since I'm falling off the bandwagon. I'm going to have just heavier more of my salad and just more crackers,
vegan burger.
Yeah, vegan stuff, and whatever that then eventually now that when I even crash that far, I still am fit. I still look fit afterwards and I'm still in a well where I'm oh man, I'm just failing and I'm but this is different than I've ever been able to reach at my peak of trying my entire life. And this is while I'm failing the most at the moment. So it's this is still progress. This is the way to go. This is still healing. This is still, even if she blows up to bigger than she's ever been within like a month or so, I guarantee it will not be failure. Like, I guarantee it will be having made the biggest cut into the hardest thing she's been trying to, deal with in her entire life. And then she'll be able to, there's just that much more movement and ability to get better as she moves along. So I wanted to at least clarify that it's not like we're just sharing a couple stories of like, juice feasting's so great, but you get obese afterwards, but you get real too skinny real like quick, but
I think that like
a huge thing.
The overall lesson that I learned looking back on the juice feasting for the length that I did, doing it for 150 days instead of somehow, having been able to tell that I needed to stop around 120 or whatever. And then also with refeeding is detaching myself from delusion. So there's this concept in bipolar, like if you're diagnosed with bipolar, there's this vocabulary that they use of delusions of grandeur and delusions of ruin. So when you're in a hypomanic state or definitely a manic state, you believe that everything is amazing and everything is going to be amazing. Like we were at a mental hospital and there was this kid that came up to us and he was like, oh, like, I love your, just, you guys are amazing and we love hanging out with you. And when I get out of here, like, we're going to, you should come over and visit my family. And they had this amazing house and like, they're just the coolest people and we're going to have such an amazing time. And, my dad just bought me this boat and he just was going on and on about all this stuff. And we're like, this is one really happy guy, and he just, everything was just so magical and amazing. And he loved people and all of this. And then the next time we saw him, like a couple days later, he was like just super sullen and depressed. And he was like, my parents are terrible. Like, they were so abusive. They've like, they've been divorced for years. And like, they're such awful people. And like, my dad's boat sunk and like, like all of this, it was like, all of those things were like ruin. And so I learned this term of delusions of grandeur and delusions of ruin. And so he's living in this state where everything is just rose-colored glasses exponentially. And then with the depression comes everything is ruin. And so I learned from that to identify in myself. Like because I remember driving to work and being like, my boyfriend hates me. I don't even know why I'm in this relationship. Like, I am driving to work, but like, I hate work. It's such a drag. Like, the kids are annoying and all this stuff. And then I'd be like, oh yeah, like I forgot to take my caffeine. So I'd take my little nibble of caffeine and put it under my tongue. And I would be like, what was it we were going to do at work today? Oh yeah, that's going to be so fun. And like, oh, and I get to see my boyfriend after and like, he's just wonderful. And it was like, wait a minute, like 10 seconds ago, you said all these negative things and now you're saying all these positive things. And so I started to separate out like delusions of grandeur and delusions of ruin. So if I'm in a mentality where it's like everything is bad, it's like, oh, okay, so I'm in the delusion of ruin, that's why everything, no matter what I look at, it's going to look like ruin. And the same thing, if everything feels so good and it's too good to be true, and everything looks that way, then that's delusions of grandeur. And so with this, I learned that there's the delusion of, this mentality of somehow a blanket, belief agreed across these people that I've gotten involved with that the longer that you go juice feasting, the better. And it's just better and better and better and better indefinitely. So I can, I'm at 120 and I said 150 and I'm going to stick to it and I'm going to do it. And I was very attached to that. And I really completely lost sight of like reality of my actual body, what my body actually needed, what was actually best for me and how to make those decisions. And it was really hard for me to even stop at 150 because I was so detached from what I was actually doing the juice feasting from. I was so in the day counting and that I was like, well, I could keep going because you can always count another day and I could do that for another 50, So I was like, well, how do you even make this decision? And it wasn't until I planned a trip to go to California in May that I was like, well, in 100 days from now, I'll be boarding an airplane and I'll be going to California and I want to be very far from juice feasting. I want to be able to eat real food and, and feel really strong in my body because I don't feel strong in my body. I've been working out and like, I'm not feeling, I feel like it helped with a lot of stability issues and stuff to be working out a lot of like, instead of getting completely fatigued juicing, I felt strong in my back and strong in my body from working out, but I didn't feel like a strong person. I felt like a skeleton getting fit, there was not much left of me to feel strong kind of feeling. And I wanted to feel like person who was fully
Right.
filling out my body, you know, like I didn't feel right. And so I wanted to get that back, and I knew I needed to eat food to get there. I'm doing the workouts, now I need to start fueling my body in a way that it can really bulk muscle, you know. And once I reoriented myself to like my actual goal and not the goal of day counting, you know, so it was like, it wasn't best for me, you know, on the level that you think that if you just go indefinitely, you know, and forever, that you're just better than other people and stuff, and it's like, no, you're more delusional if it's not actually what your body needs. And you know,
it is interesting because it is like a, you know, you don't then want to deny that there's good and evil, or that like it is something that's moving you in a right direction, and that over time going that direction is the right thing. But you also don't want to detach from the reality of, you have to bring all of this with you, you have to bring all of your baggage with you, you have to bring your mental emotional state with you. And it is so easy to know how fast you're moving in the right direction from, especially doing something like juice feasting and stuff. It's such a fast acceleration pedal in exactly the right direction, but it's like at some point you're going over the speed limit, at some point you're putting yourself in danger, at some point you're still getting to your goal, your destination and stuff, but you don't want to spin out. You don't want to have someone pull in front of you and you're going 150 miles an hour.
I think we can all agree that, you know, Sarah went a year, but it's not because she was a normal functioning person and she just had the willpower to go a year. Like, she went a year because her body couldn't digest food. Do you think that anybody should go 2 years juice feasting? Like,
no, that's not, what I'm saying is that's too much, too fast sort of thing. But it's like, you want to get that 2 years of juice feasting and maybe over 4 years.
You're headed towards what too fast? Because that's literally, at some point you have to balance out.
To being not just fully in full addiction to your foods on a daily basis, to being free.
I think you have to balance out with
to,
actually like being in the real world, eating
that's
food,
exactly
and go back
what
and
I'm
forth.
saying though, is that is the slowing down, you know, the not just, you can't just hit the acceleration pedal until you get there. You have to actually choose a speed, which includes coming off of juice feasting. It includes eating normal food, and like, because your body isn't designed just to live on juices, it needs to have things moving through it and stuff. But the juice feasting speeds you up, and you can then have an easier time.
I mean, what I learned is at some point you're like either stalled out or you're going the wrong way, like for what your body's needing now.
But
like,
that same analogy is burnt, you know, spinning out, you know, that if you're crashed on the side of the road, you're not getting to your destination any faster. You've chosen to go too fast and you've injured yourself, and then you're not getting there, and then you're not even at a crawl or going backwards, but you're just stuck there and waiting for your car to get repaired, you know, like you're not actually going to get there now, you know. But that it at least, like, just in the technical way you phrased it, that it is still a part of the goal. It is still a part of the way of, there is still a goal of being freed of being addicted to your foods and living in a body that doesn't work for you and all these other things. It's just worth learning. You can't jump straight to there. And it even is like years into the process that like you still have to be going at a moderate pace, and you're still not going to be there, and you still have to go slowly in the right direction and stuff. But it is addicting to get that like rush of going so fast in the right direction, and that's good for catching up a little bit of space or whatever, and hopefully a cop won't spot you and like you got a little bit ahead, you know, sort of thing. But in general, living on juice fasting isn't living healthfully. It is a medication. It is a medicine.
Yeah,
you know?
right, exactly.
So you don't want to get hooked on that fact that you got a drug of that medication of fasting. It's the healthiest medication you could possibly have, but that's not living healthfully. It just gets you ahead so that you are more capable of living healthfully, sort of thing. But,
so that particular like delusion, and that's like the mimetic demon, this whole like, you know, well, this person only got to go 2 weeks and she really wishes she could have gotten longer, or this person stopped after 20 days and is so frustrated. That is how I've felt every time I've gotten off of it. Every time you talk about juice feasting, it's always that I would like, as if you wish you could just go forever, you know. And so that like mimetic demon, you know, that mentality was really hard to like shake myself from. And I did not have the ability to identify it or to shake myself from it until I was planning the trip in May, and I got outside of it just because I was planning that trip, and then I could see what I had been doing, and I was like, oh, no wonder I was so lost, you know. But then, so the other thing that I wanted to say about that is that there's a delusion of proximity. Like there's a delusion. So when you juice feast, okay, so when I started juice feasting, I was so sick of food, right? And so it was easy for me to be like, I never want to eat food again. I'm sick all the time, like all of these mentalities. And that's what like life feels like, how I identify my body, how I identify myself as a human being and stuff. And then after pushing myself, you know, so far and then so far past what was healthy for my body or whatever, now I'm in the opposite delusions where it's like I could eat and eat and eat forever, you know, and like
right.
And then the delusions of like, oh well, I know who I am, and I know that when I do that, these bad things happen. I'm completely out of control. Like all of this stuff, and picturing in a month from now where I never got it under control, and it's like all of that is delusion. Like all of it. None of it is here. None of it is present. None of it is listening to your body. Like none of it is actually anything helpful. You know? Like,
they're all data points and they're pointing towards something, but you don't want to get swept up in any of them in particular.
So it's all delusion. And it almost feels like in a way my body constantly trying to bring me back. It's like I get sucked into this feeling of like, oh well, I ate this big meal, so I definitely shouldn't eat for a while, and I'm like making this, you know, like this delusion. And I also have the mentality of like, I don't know if I would ever want to juice feast again.
Well,
that's a delusion because I just juice feasted for 150 days, you know? I felt that way about eating food, but like, look at me now, you know? I'm doing great. I love food and I'm digesting it really well. And it's starting to get a little wonky, but you know, like I'm figuring it out. So like all of these delusions I'm seeing since I went so extreme, I'm seeing like looking at that side of the pendulum being like, whoa, and being like,
exactly.
Wait a minute. Like I was just
Wait,
there.
Where am I right now? Oh God.
But then it's like all of a sudden I'm like, and I'm making another quesadilla, you know, and my body being like, hey, wake up right here. Whatever I say right now, you know, like you don't need to be making any of those decisions based on any of those things. You need to be making the decisions based on right now. This tortilla is going to taste really good. And you're just going to be here present with it. And we're not going to make judgments. And we're just going to be trusting the process. And like, you do a good job. You've got lots of information. You've experimented with everything. You're on the right path. Just be present, you know?
We'll have to do another follow-up, like a 50 days out from the juice feast and everything. We hadn't really thought about that until now and stuff, but that would make a lot of sense because it's really interesting, you know, and occurring to me, you know, how I'll break everything into masculine, feminine, and, you know, opposites that interplay, but inversely and all this other stuff that it's really occurring to me of, it seems like such an illustration of that. All of what you're talking about makes total sense to me, and that I've been left brain navigating around all this stuff and seeing that over time, like, I am, you know, overdoing the obsessing on the, you know, juice feasting aspect, you know, just when you're in it, you know that you want to keep going forever if it's possible. And then when you're out of it, you know that that's the direction you're supposed to go, and, you know, all this other stuff, and that, you know, you're trying to have a problem with the fact that you're not on it now. But then, you know, I'm good enough at noticing like, no, but I need to be all right with where I'm at now. I can see over the long form that it's gotten that much better. And so I'm doing the right thing clearly. And it's been impossible to just force myself to go straight to the goal. So this is the right thing to do. But all of that is intellectual for me. Mm-hmm. It's 100% intellectual for me.
Right.
And you describing the like during pregnancy, and then that being akin to what you're experiencing now, that you're literally getting a physical experience, an actual lived experience of the falling backwards and regrounding is an absolute, you know, part of the work as well and everything. And like, I have such an intellectual map of that, but I have no experience of that. I have no feeling of that. I've never been overly stuffed and been like, but this feels good right now. No. A few minutes ago when I was stuffing it, it felt amazing. But right now, all I know is like, well, this was the wrong thing, but I can be okay with that. And that I at least can get enough joy from remembering what that was like, and that made it okay. But this isn't okay. And like, you're able to be like, no, but this is okay. I feel so good right now. And that's fascinating.
I mean, did you ever feel that way when you had come off the 60 days and then you were like eating a huge, you know, salad with cashew cream, and you were sitting back full with that salad of cashew cream, like right after the juice feast?
When I wasn't overstuffed from it. It was like before I had that extra meal, you know, which when you're coming off a juice feast, that's a very tiny meal that completely gets you right up to that, okay, I'm full and I don't need another one. And then within that 30 minutes or an hour, you're like, like, I've got room for more, and I can just be blissed out if I just have a little more salad. This is going to be amazing. And like, then you go ahead and do it, but then you even have a little more than your little bit more, and then it's like, I'm stuffed, and that was the wrong thing to do. Like, okay, I can learn from that, but also, like, I feel bad right now, and like, okay, you know, I'll learn my lesson. I'm not going to dwell on it or make a problem, but, you know, that it wasn't the right thing to do. And like, it's interesting. It's fascinating hearing that you have an experience of that other side.
Watching Michael Smith's videos and stuff have really helped bolster that. Like, he was talking about the book, I don't know the author, but The Master and His Emissary, where it's the left brain, or the right brain is the master and the left brain is the emissary. And so the right brain is the one like,
I've got to watch that.
To me, it's like the right brain is the one that like gets me up and takes me into the kitchen and gets the stuff out of the fridge with me being like, what are we doing? And the left brain is like, what are you doing?
Like,
what are you doing?
Wait a second. I was doing something else over here. What is happening?
So, okay, you know, and so I've trained the left brain now to be like, okay, so this is what we're doing now, you know, like, and trying to accept it, you know, and it's like the right brain should be the master, you know, and it feels almost like this whole exercise of eating so much food and stuff. And so I'm training the left brain to be accepting of letting the right brain do it, you know, because the whole concept that, you know, behind that book, The Master and His Emissary, is that the right brain doesn't have the words, it doesn't have the calculation, it doesn't have, all it has is like context and just like the Holy Spirit movement, you know, like just moves you and moves through you and stuff. And then, but you do have the left brain, and it is this powerful computer, and it is to your benefit to use it. And the right brain constantly goes over to the left brain and goes, what if we do this? Can you calculate it out? And the left brain starts to calculate and do all this stuff, and then it starts to make the decisions, and it starts to do the shoulds, and it says, all right, so we're going to, you know, lay it out on the calendar, and we're going to, you know, do it exactly like this. And the way that it should go is the left brain does the calculations and gives the power back to the right brain, and then the right brain has the context, and it has all the information, and it just lives. You know, it just lives the life. And if that, you know, it's that masculine versus feminine, like you make the plans and you know, you say you're going to be there at that time because that seems correct. And that's what the left brain says is, you know, that works for me. This time works for me and stuff. But then you have to also have that feminine side of the grace to say, this doesn't serve me. You know, now is the time that I said that I would be there and stuff. And like, it's not in my highest good now, you know, and that's okay, you know, and so I'm not going to do it. And that's the right brain versus the left brain as well.
It's so fascinating seeing you describe it that way. I've done so much thinking on the interplay of the left and right brain and how they work together and stuff. And even the way you're describing it makes sense. And I can see that as a functional way of operating. And obviously then explicitly I've seen it, and I still see the complete opposite of it, where, you know, and I think you said the master and its emissary. Isn't the master in that context? Wouldn't that be the left brain?
No, it's the right brain.
Because I see it the opposite, where it's like if you think of a human and a dog, the human would be the left brain and the dog would be the right brain, right? That very explicitly, because the human's the one that makes the plans and understands what's going on.
Sure, but the reason why we get dogs and we raise them is because dogs ground us and bring us to the present moment.
Which would make them the right brain. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. That's exactly what I'm saying. So then the master and his emissary, the man would be the one who knows when we're going to go to the park. The man would be the one who procured the food. The man would be the one that would be making the decisions, and then it's incumbent on him to be referencing the dog to make sure the dog's happy and that he's doing what the dog needs. And that like, but it seems so much like, you know, and that's how it would work anyway, where estrogen and the feminine, and that's how I've seen us, and that's how I got the grip on this masculine and feminine and the left and right brain, you know, 7-8 years ago or whatever, and started to finally understand our relationship and stuff, that it was like, I operate in such a feminine aspect because I was raised around all women, and I was kind of just inherently browbeat by us all assuming we're all just citizens and whatever else, and like I'm just really bad at the emotional side of things and at understanding what other people's needs were and all this stuff. And so I took that personally, and I tried to be better at that, even though I wasn't nearly as good as you guys at doing those things and everything. And so I lead with that feminine side. I estimate everything that I'm doing rather than calculate the things that I'm doing, and I'm a master of that estimation process. It's how I do 100% of my cooking. It's all felt and experiential, because I've made stuff a million times, and I can think about what the next ingredient is, and I can feel exactly how much I should put in it without looking at a recipe and adding up, okay, well, it was okay this time, so that means, you know, half that much of, you know, and instead it's all this estimation. Like, that's what I'm good at, and it's all this right brain stuff which is the feminine side, but I'm doing all of it specifically, explicitly in service of truth, in service of binary, in service of structure, of building structure. And you're the exact opposite, where you're raised in a Western society where you're not sufficient just being obsessed with children and taking care of kids. So then you have to be making money. You have to be performing as well in school as the other citizens, or else you're not proving yourself. You're not as good and valuable as other people. So you, on some levels, for whatever reasons, took school more seriously, and you performed well in school, and you got into the IB stuff, and you were taking that aspect more seriously and leading with that. And then you've taken making money for yourself and being a provider for yourself and making money for yourself more seriously than I have, because it's felt easy and natural for me. So I let that just go to the back burner, and I operate on these other ways. But you found it challenging, and you're self-charged with being left-brained and being masculine from society. So you lead with those things. You lead with being organized and calculating things and that sort of thing, but you do it entirely in service of how it makes you feel. You do it entirely in service of what your experience of things is like, and what you feel like, and how what the energy is of what that effect is, sort of thing. And so we end up operating completely inversely, which is fascinating. And like, that's so far at the core of like how I digest everything, is through the masculine, feminine, through the left and right brain. And then that all started when I was able to finally identify how we operate and how we're completely inverses. And that's how we were butting heads so hard, because to me it was like, the thing you're doing though doesn't add up to truth. And you're saying, yeah, but it's a relative truth, and that it's right in my world. Like, doesn't matter if it's right in your world if it's not the truth though. And like, so then we would just hate each other, and we would try and murder each other. And it's like, oh, we're the left and right brain criticizing each other and saying, hey, you're not doing the processes right. And it's like, no, we're doing them completely right, but we're on the opposite sides, and we have to put our information into the corpus callosum, and you're supposed to live and make your decisions in the corpus callosum, having two in non-combinable bits of information put together and going, okay, I'm going to go with this one this time, you know, like, right. Okay, throw them all in the middle. Okay, yeah. This one makes more sense this time.
Studying Freud, that's actually, I always like had logged the ego and the id, and thought that that's how it was. And I don't know how I dropped the superego, but essentially it's the id and the superego. So the id is just like the puppy dog, you know, the like little kid, the pleasure, the pain, the, you know, like the desire, just that natural impulse to indulge and feel good, and experiential. And then the superego though is the societal like rules and regulations and culture, and, you know, like, structure. You know, and being good and right, and you know, all of that. And then the ego is just the one trying to navigate between the two. Cool. That's like, okay, so it got a little out of control. We're going to give the superego a moment, you know, like to kind of balance it out and do all that. And that was Freud, like, figured that out a long time ago. So it feels like it goes all the way back to that.
Yeah, and just that from that emissary, and the, you know, that it's like the way you're describing it makes sense as a way to operate, and that would be the feminine way to operate, that you're saying have the right brain be the master, because that's the lived experience, that's the body, that's the, and then you reference the left brain, because that will be able to integrate you with your environment and find the truth that's between everybody else that you can agree upon. And so you reference the left brain. And for me, it's a master and his dog. The master and the emissary is the left brain being the master, because he's the one that knows what's going on. He's the one that's right. So he's the one that should be making decisions and pointing things out and whatever, and then should be referencing that the feminine, referencing his wife, referencing the dog, you know, or whatever, this yin, or the children, or whatever, to make sure that they're happy. If they're not happy, if it's not being grounded, if your truth, the truths you're digging out, not your truth, but the truths that you're digging out aren't being of service to you, to your body, to your family, to everybody else, then it's not useful. And the useful side would be the, you know, the applied side would be the feminine and everything. And so that's fascinating just hearing you explain. And apparently that book,
I do want to clarify though, I feel like it hasn't been said, but it's something that I know from what you're saying. But the underlying thing in what he's saying, because it sounds like he's dividing us very much, but it's what he's saying is more of, those things have to be extremely combined and work together extremely well. In him, both sides; in me, both sides. He's just talking about like kind of a prioritization, slight lean.
Which leads.
Yeah. But it's like a slight lean, because the way that you're describing it, because you're trying to talk about the differences, it makes it sound like masculine is supposed to be a particular kind of way and not the other way, and feminine this way and not that. But it's like, you know, if I think about like, you know, raising children, in our culture, like our generation was raised, our generations, I don't know how close we are, our parents' generations were raised with like this left brain, like this is, children should be seen and not, that's not how we were raised, but my mom was raised, and children should be seen and not heard, and like like all left brain and no id, cut down the id, like all super ego. And so now, especially, I'm raising a 4-year-old, and the people that I'm surrounded by, and, the kind of movement of our generation is trying to rebalance that by focusing on the child and saying, this is, like right now we're trying to figure out his diet and how to get him more calories and stuff. And it's like, on one level, that's important, and there needs to be some kind of structure and information about it. The emissary is important, but the master in my world as the feminine is always, does this serve his life being a life worth living? Does he get to show up as himself every day? And when he says his body isn't interested in something or is interested in something, is that the most important thing when it can be within reason, which is almost all of the time,
Right.
But, in parenting though, like even through my divorce, I really tried to have that balance with the masculine side. Like I was the one, present and at home with the child, being in the moment with him, child's work is play, and, all of that stuff, just making life something that is worth him coming out, into the world to be part of. But then we would like he got a bullseye rash that looked like, and immediately, like his father is all left brain, he's the one that can do the research, all that, like immediately contacting him and being like, I need your help, like I can do my best, but my best in this realm is extremely limited. And like, that's where things began to fall apart, fall apart to the point where he completely bowed out of our lives because he felt that was me using him. But I think that, in a home like that, none of this is ever to say that there aren't people that, have penises that are very feminine leaning, and that's perfectly fine, or have vaginas and are very masculine leaning, and that's perfectly fine and all that. But, in a general sense, a mother being the one empathetic, in tune, attuned to the child in all times, and then the father being the one that you kind of reference or pull in, who's always there and always attuned to everything as well, in a way. But you like they kind of create the structure and bring in the money and do, like, that's the general way that males and females have kind of evolved.
When you learn to walk,
in general,
you hold on to your mother, and you are inspired by your father to walk towards your father, but your mother's the one that created you and that you feel comforted by, and then your father's the one that you feel inspired to reach toward, once you're comfortable enough,
Right.
But yeah, and that, obviously, as a disclaimer, like she was saying, that men and women have testosterone and estrogen just in different balances, and we each have a left and right hemisphere. Right. So it's just a matter of
all people should be working towards, like, regardless of gender, no gender, identifying as all genders, regardless of any of that, you still need to constantly work to integrate and get good at being, like, here and present and in the material world and experiencing and moving from intuition and, truth on a somatic level, and also being intelligent and discerning and
a truth that's shareable, a truth that's shareable between
a verifiable truth, a truth that conveys judgment and discernment, and that judgment and discernment should be differentiated from other people. I could see something that Garrett's doing and be like, oh my god, I would never eat a salad with that. I can't believe he's doing that. If I don't have differentiation and see, oh my god, I would never eat a salad like that. Wow, it's interesting that he enjoys it. So judgment is often that discernment, which is necessary to decide what's good for me. But if you don't have differentiation from other people, then you think he shouldn't eat that salad because you don't realize that that's your compass saying not that way, and not something that you need to put on the other person. But yeah, you should always be balancing those two things.
Yeah, and it's massively important. I mean, that's clearly such a central part of our society kind of disintegrating and falling apart, is convincing us that we're all the same, and that that really strikes at the root of being able to see that there's two poles that are constantly dancing and interplaying, and when you say that the two poles are the same, then you just have gray, you just have this blankness, that's like, just a bunch of balls bumping into each other rather than this whole, kind of opposites that are inverse and play around each other that creates all the spectrum of light and creates all this stuff that we experience. And it really is central to the confusion and kind of collapse of society that we're seeing around us and everything. So it's really important figuring out how to identify these differences and figure out how that opposite from you won't ever be able to understand. When I started realizing that opposite for me and Carissa, that it was like, and for it essentially, and again, this is a generalization, but it essentially clicked for me for all the women that have been in my life. And, basically that it's like, I was judging them on a level of, if I were doing the things they were doing, I would be totally in the wrong, and I would be wrong because that's not in service of truth, a truth that's outside of you. So what is wrong with you? And I would just grate on them, and I would, but then they would just know that they should just pull away from me and that I'm being mean and I'm attacking them and all this other stuff. And like, didn't matter how nicely I tried to navigate that, I was still judging them based on this other, this other sort of thing. And it's been an incredible thing noticing that, understanding the opposite, understanding the feminine for me, and for women to understand men. Again, those are just the poles. That's just a generalization, that who knows where you find yourself, but that whatever pole you're on, you will never actually understand that opposite. And it is growth to becoming closer to understanding them, learning rules in your own understanding and framework to identify how that opposite moves and how it works, but realize that you will never be experiencing it from that pole. And like, that's been the most enlightening thing that I've put together over all this time, that it makes sense that we had such a hard time understanding each other, and we were really going at each other a few years ago and everything, and like completely unable to understand each other on any level. And that's the beautiful part about it, is that's how it's supposed to be. And, if you're going to have a heterosexual marriage, sort of thing, that it's like, that is the difficulty that's built into that, and kind of the magic to it, is that like, you can't actually understand what your wife is wanting. You can just get better at identifying how you've been wrong, and
all
how
humans, like you have to,
them.
that's a part of maturity that comes, is like, you can, have a best friend and feel like you guys have the same, soul or whatever, but at some point you're going to reach something that you can't agree on, you can't understand, and it's
but
like,
for the men in my life, I could identify that, and I could challenge them where I feel like they're being wrong and all this other stuff, and then that could play out. And when I would do it with the women, I would just be attacking them, and I'm in the wrong, and like, how does that make it, what are you talking about? You're wrong, clearly. So I'll just forget it, I'll just not worry about it. And like, once I let that shift, it was like I stopped ruining all my relationships with just women in general, just friends and whatever else. It was just, oh man. But
So I'm finding that a big part of what I'm going through now, this like separating from delusion and all of that, like I'm experiencing myself eat an ungodly amount of food, and hearing and feeling those old like little ghosts of judgments of like, you're gonna get real fat, and you're not supposed to do this, and all of that stuff, but having the somatic experience of just, but I am doing this, and it's going to be delicious, and I'm going to like it. And then, part of like the feeling of liking being full despite the discomfort and all of that, I think comes from the level of self-acceptance of like being free. It feels in a way like if you're a child that, is always getting in trouble for everything that you do, and then your parent changes and just loves you no matter what you do, and so you do things to act out and to test it, and all of that, and then you're doing something bad, and you fall off and you get hurt, and you're laying there on the ground hurt, and you're like, but like, I'm still loved, like, and I was allowed to, and nobody's gonna say, that's it, that's the last time you're ever gonna do that, I told you weren't supposed to do that, and it still feels like, I can feel the little thing coming up of like, is this too much? Are you gonna get mad at me now? Is this too much? And it just feels like such joy in my body to be like, you're not too much, like whatever, if you get fat, you're not too much, like whatever it is that you do, like you're not too much, you're okay, you're in control now, like you decide what you need to eat. And at the same time, I'm doing that with my child, trying to just constantly remember that he needs to be the one in charge of what he eats, regardless of the fact that like he's, you know, not really gaining weight or whatever. He can have whatever he wants, and like it's his journey, you know, like I'm here to help, and I'm going to take him in and, you know, see if there's anything on the left brain, super left brain science medical side that helps in any way. And you know, but I'm still the adult that gets to filter and decide if those things are actually helpful and all of that. Like I'm doing the, you know, all the responsible things, but in the meantime, I don't need to be stressed about it. I don't need to be like in some sort of overt control over anything. Like, this is his journey, and, you know, he's got tons of energy. He's thriving in every way possible. So he gets to be the one that decides what he puts in his body and how he feels. I mean, it's a tremendous amount of food. I don't understand, but, but yeah, so detaching from all of those judgments and the fears and all of that stuff. And yeah, it'll be fun to do another interview in 50 days. And
it is a long, hard, winding journey, just healing and going in the right direction, doing the right thing. It, in and of itself, it's built in that's going to be confusing and difficult and hard. It's going to be that perfect microcosm of while you're in the juice feast, you were taking that aspect, that masculine, like, I know the ideal and I can see where I'm going and I'm going towards that ideal. And then as soon as that started breaking and you shifted into this other world, then you feel this absolute connection to this other side, this other ideal of like, but just doing what my body wants, that's the only thing that's important.
Well, that's
so therefore,
what my body wanted, the juicing, so that was the same thing on either side.
Sure. Well, but sticking to it and wanting to keep sticking to it, you know.
I had lost touch with.
Exactly.
I was completely not trusting my body. I was like, okay, so I broke the seal and I ate a little bit of cashew cream, and I'm in all this stressful situation, and I'm coming into you know, my parents' house with all the family, and I'm getting triggered, so that's why I'm doing all of this, and so I need to get it under control long enough. And that was your advice too, you know, like you need to stop for long enough that you get out of it, and I did, and I got to the point where I was like, okay, but once I got clean from the cashew cream and stuff, and I was out of like the addiction, the dopamine cycle, I was left with what I had had before, which was an extreme irritability. Very, very, very irritable. Like a very short fuse, like an aggressive feeling in my body towards my child who was interrupting me and stuff. And I had been that way from the beginning of the juice feasting, and it like never got any better. But then when I was doing the cashew cream, it kind of like distracted me or helped or whatever. But
subdued,
But once I got clean of the cashew cream, I was left with that and no feeling of benefit or doing the right thing or healing or putting my body through, you know, like, oh, there's all this stuff coming up and coming out, like none of that happening. There was no longer any benefit. I was just a really mean mom all the time, no matter where in my cycle. Like, and I was like, I'm done. Like, I'm done. When I hit 150, I have to start refeeding because I can't continue. Like, it's been... well, I was like that on the carnivore diet too, I think. So it was like a whole year of my child's life that I was like, there was just no reprieve from like PMS mom, you know. It was like, I'm done. Like, I can't keep doing this to him. And I mean, as soon as I started, not the fruit, you know, I did 3 days of refeeding correctly. And on the 4th day, I just went to a potluck and I tried a couple bites of things. And then the next thing I know, I'd eaten everything on my child's plate. And, you know, like, it was game over and I had eaten all this stuff. And I was like, life is good. Like, life is really, really good. So yeah, that was the end of that. And as soon as I started eating, it just brought me back down to life. It brought me back down. And you know, the way that I described it when I was in it and I was having such a hard time with the irritability was, if I was just a single person and I was at home and I had my schoolwork and my workouts and all of that stuff, it would have been so amazing. Like, I definitely feel like if he's only 4, so it wouldn't happen. But like, if my parents were like, we're going to go to Mexico for a month and, you know, do you and your son want to come? And I was like, oh, I can't really because school, but you can take Thane. And he was going to be gone for a month. I would juice feast. I would absolutely juice feast that entire time because
if I didn't have
I could be so efficient.
Food in here and all sorts of, I would have probably kept going on the 60 days. I wouldn't have been as much of a struggle.
But when I felt that way and I was so efficient and I was focusing on my schoolwork or I was getting things done or I was in there juicing and my child wanted to talk to me and came in and wanted me to wipe his nose and wanted me to go wipe his butt and, you know, all of these things every single time, or he'd just come up to me and like put his hands on my belly and stuff like that. It was like, stop, like, what are you doing? Leave me alone. I'm reading or I'm juicing or I can't hear you because the loud noises. And it was just, but if you'd left me alone to just do what I was doing, I was like this beautifully efficient human machine. It was amazing, but I wasn't a mom. Like, I wasn't a good mom. Like, I wasn't a good, like, person to socialize with.
I was exactly the same way, because when I was, and I, like I've described, I kind of fall right back into it as soon as I start juice feasting now. But it's like when I'm in my deep juice feasts and stuff, like I'm so direct and whatnot, and I have just burned in my memory these conversations I had with my friends and stuff, where it's like I wouldn't put up with any nonsense anytime they'd have just, you know, a human moments of just like saying something that's not right, but they're just trying to, you know, get you off their back or whatever. It'd be like, well, no, because that's incorrect. So therefore we're going to talk about this, and we're going to, you know, and like, and then they try and like bluster how, oh, but you can't just say that and whatever. And be like, yes, I fucking can, because it's true. So therefore we're going to keep talking about that. And like, I was just mean, but I was technically right, but I wasn't trying to be mean,
right.
But then I didn't have any room to put up with any nonsense. There was just no room to be human for me or for anybody else, sort of thing. So you do get into that.
I mean, it'll totally be like a life goal of mine one day, like to have Thane come visit mom and dad for like a month, and I could just like write a book, like because I'll just juice feast and like write, and I will get so much. It'll be the most amazing book you've ever read, because it'll just be me flowing. But like that's like the hardest part of being a mother. I mean, I think that if you're a father, it's a really hard part, but then you get to escape it all the time usually, you know. But that's not to say there aren't fathers who are home with their children. But the idea that like as a human being there has to be flow, you know, but you don't get to do that when there's a baby that cries every time you put them down, or that, you know, wants to talk to you, a 4-year-old who's learning to compose full essays now, and like and they're slow and stuttery and they're very important, and they're really just about this like one small dynamic that needs to be described in like 10 different ways because we're mastering the English language. And you're like, I have to finish reading this. Please stop talking. Right. It's so hard. You can't flow. You have no flow state. Like, so now, I mean, I wake up at 5 a.m. That's what I do. I wake up at 5 a.m. So I have at least 2 hours where I can just do schoolwork before he wakes up. I try to get my workout in, but
so you do have to compromise for being human. Like it is that this is an ideal. You can see where we should be clean, we should be healthy, we shouldn't be dependent on food to be happy and healthy, just like any other drug and everything else. And you can see where that is, but then you also have to have grace for being embodied here and for being human, and all the trash that you're bringing with you, all the luggage, you know, emotional baggage and stuff that you've got with you. And like, you can't even just acknowledge it and go, okay, but now that I know that all that's there, well, then it doesn't matter. Like, you have to take the long, slow, you know, steady journey, and you have to do the taking where you're at too seriously, and then being on the other end of the spectrum and taking that too seriously, and then start being able to be patient enough with those moments that you're not condemning yourself for being in a different place, and slowly correlate those things and just get better at screwing up back and forth. You know, like that seems to be the whole thing. I go through that almost on a like daily and weekly basis at this point of like, I'm going to get my diet perfect again, and like, oh no, but now that's just not even going to happen. I'm not going to. I'm going to do whatever I want in the moment, you know, right now. And then like, okay, but just being able, when you've got grace with that and you're able to pay attention to that, you can notice that you're making that progress over time, that you're still doing the right things. You're doing a good enough job on each of those screw ups that direction and screw ups this direction, that you're actually still moving in the right direction. That's really the whole thing. The goal is not seeing how awesome her juice feast was and how awesome juice feasting's done for me and for my mom. And so then now, if you just get on a juice feast, then you're going to clear and heal everything on some level. It will give you a light. It will show you what the right direction is. It is a magical thing. There's an incredible aspect to it, but you're not going to be able to suddenly get on that and then be like, okay, well then now I know what I'm doing, and I'm just going to now do the right thing until everything's fine and all that stuff. It's so much. If anybody would be capable of that, it would be us. We're so obnoxiously intense about when we focus on something and whatever else. We would have done it. We tried. We tried with all the effort that's possible on any level.
I had none of that food in my house and all that stuff.
Exactly. And so that really is the biggest aspect, is like, it's just about taking the journey and getting better at the journey and knowing that the journey is going to keep going. But that if you're not on that journey, you're just going to kind of start floundering the other direction. So it is long and hard to do the journey, and it's never going to be this ideal and this perfect thing that you're looking for, but it is still the thing to do, of just moving the right direction and cleaning up and healing yourself and detoxing and getting over old traumas and doing all this stuff. That this is definitely the right way to go, but don't, confuse the progress that you're making with thinking you can put it all on black and you're gonna win this next round, you know, like,
and then you're gonna be you'll have figured it out.
Yeah.
It's too easy to believe that, but I think you know, you trick yourself into that to keep yourself on the straight and narrow for as long as you can. Like that's the delusion that comes with feeling, you know, like you need it and it helps you do it, or feeling like it's right for you right now feels like it's right for you forever, which is just part of the delusion of ruin, delusion of grandeur. You know,
so you need that wisdom from having the experience, and you just keep going and getting better at it slowly over time. And so just not abandoning ship on yourself or judging yourself, you know, when you're making that pivot each time, you know, that's the whole thing. You'll do better and better as long as you're trying and you're paying enough attention. So
I wanted to to introduce this, I'm going to talk about Michael Smith again. So I'm going to plug him real quick. He has such a generic name, but he's on YouTube doing like 100 days of lives every day, and talking about just the most amazing mind-blowing stuff, if you like what we were talking about on that level, where we've deviated from juice listing. But if you search Michael Smith Wise Knowing, you'll definitely find him.
On YouTube.
On YouTube or
Facebook, right?
Yeah, Facebook, or just Google. He writes blogs and stuff. I'm sure he's used that phrase. Nice. So what I was going to say is that he talks about matter, you know, like when you say, you know, pay attention to what really matters or whatever, like the concept of matter. It's the material world, like what's here, Mother Earth, like maternal matter, Mother Earth, being in our bodies. And so I wanted to circle back to, you know, 150 days. And I know that, you know, probably most people who are like have seen this just randomly on Google and watched it or searched for it or whatever, kind of want to know more details that matter, like material. So I like my weight loss, which I don't view as just like a great thing, but I went from 150 pounds to 120 pounds, and that was not like an even journey. If you watch my other videos, like I think I gained weight the first month.
Gained weight for like 2 weeks. And then you stagnated for another 2 weeks.
Yeah, exactly. Like, that first month I just was bloated.
With no solid foods at all. Like,
I totally cleaned out. Like I'd been doing enemas well before that too. So anyway, and then there were so many plateaus, and then rapid weight loss and plateaus. Lots and lots and lots of trauma and stuff emerged and stuff. One of my biggest complaints is the hair loss. Just, I take, every time I shower, I collect all of the hair and I roll it into a ball, and I've got them all like lined up. So there's just all of these like balls of my hair, because I'm just waiting for the day that I stop adding to them, you know, and then I can be like, this is all the hair that I lost. My hair is so thin. And I think I'm going to chop it off into a bob, because there's no point in it growing out, because it's like it separates and you can see how thin it is down here, you know? Like, at least if it's shorter, then you can't really, it doesn't do this, you know, separate and be like, that's all I've got.
I wouldn't think anything about it. It looks normal to me.
Because it's fine when it's cleaner. But anyway, that's been really hard. And I've only been eating for a week now. So, because the first 3 days was just
you're still
prunes.
Mostly juice.
Prunes and
and
then so I've been eating for about 5 days, I guess, 6 days.
Are you still doing juice along with it?
I am to an extent. I definitely drink juice the first thing when I wake up in the morning, but once I work out, I eat like a salad, or this morning I made myself like a big dosa, and I did like greens, and I actually had a couple of the farm eggs, and that was really amazingly delicious. And then I had a quesadilla. It was just massive, like double-handed burrito, and then I ate, and then I had a quesadilla afterwards.
Wow.
But anyway, once I start eating to that extent, I'm not pushing myself to drink juice, because I'm gonna get like way too many extra calories, you know, on top of all the calories I'm cramming in. But I do drink it constantly if I'm feeling like I'm not hungry, but like you know, like stomach upset, or I need something else. But so I'm drinking a little bit. So the hair loss, and then I'm hoping that'll go away soon. But the other thing is just the irritability. That was definitely my biggest complaint, and I'm kind of grateful for it, because who knows what I would have decided at 150 if I hadn't had that, because I was feeling like, what is even the point of making this decision, you know, like how do I make the decision? I could go on forever. And then I was like, I am mean, like to my child, like I need to not do this anymore. I could no longer blame it on like a part of my cycle or whatever. It was just like all of the time. So it's hard to feel so efficient and effective in life when you have a 4-year-old that needs you all the time. Anyway, So yeah, I'm really loving eating as much as I was loving not eating. So,
Yeah.
I mean, that's really what you want to feel. You just want to feel like you're doing the best thing for you, you know? So,
definitely.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, cool. Pretty neat. That's a pretty mind-blowing accomplishment. Like, it's a wild thing to get under your belt.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, go back in time and when I told you 100 days and be like 150.
Yeah, I'm gonna do 300, but I'll just say 150 though, just to make it, just in case. But I mean, we all know that I'm gonna go for a year.
Yeah, that's true. I was ready to go for a year.
Yeah, pretty incredible.
Yeah.
But that's the real grace of it, is being able to navigate those shifts and stuff.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, I mean, your other option is just to like have the delusion and then fight for the delusion.
Right.
Like, no, I said I would do this for a year. Right. And it's like, yeah, but that's because that's what felt like a good thing to you at that time. Like, if it's not the right thing now, then let it go, man. Let it go. And just be proud of yourself for being able to do that.
Yeah. Well, and most importantly, not even, it's not even necessary to have some cool accomplishment of this many, it doesn't really mean anything, but it's really the change in your diet that's happened afterwards. Like you're saying, and specifically that's how I described mine the whole time, that it's like the change was in my binges. Now my binges are avocado, avocado and romaine, and then some almond crackers thrown on into the mix.
Yeah,
like,
I'm obsessed with soups,
that's
grains, and
compared to like
corn.
I would literally like you or whatever. I'd end up at a fast food place, or I'd end up just gorging on whatever in the fridge and like.
And it's so funny, especially when I was doing because I did the carnivore diet, so I was away from any addiction. So it was just me and meat. I didn't get to have dairy or anything else, and then I went to juice feasting, and through the whole thing I would see the little advertisements for I can't remember who it is, but there's a company that says we'll restock your fridge with like vegan food, and so all these packaged products, just like and they show a fridge that's just full of tubs and all of that, and I'd be like, what? Like, gross. Who would want that? And like, now this is what my fridge looks like. It's just like vegan yogurt, vegan sour cream, vegan cream cheese. Like, it's just like all vegan butter, vegan other butter, like just all of the things, and like my corn tortillas, and just like all of this stuff. And I'm like
compared to where you've been,
I know.
That's
it's so
the real
funny.
thing.
I was just like, that's the thing that's wrong with vegan, But I mean, and I do love it that I can tell that it's like, I mean, there's definitely an addiction on a level to what I'm doing. There's there's definitely the dopamine and all of that stuff, but it's not into my regular addiction, right? Mm-hmm. It's not into the things that I would normally, but so it's very clearly just pack on fat. Like it's that like high calorie, like I want to eat food that will send a signal to my body that we are in abundance. We've got multiple sources of fuel. It's going to keep coming at you. You're going to be okay. Right. Do what you got to do now, go ahead and live. Like, and it's just, I want the corn tortillas for the carbs and then saturated in the vegan butter and like full of vegan cheese. And like, I'll have another one of those, even though I just ate like a massive meal with all the greens and the, all of that stuff. And it's like, my body wants to know it can have an abundance of fat and carbohydrates anytime it wants. And it's like, all right. Okay. Yep. And you let me know when you're done. we can go back to something more sane. We'll see how that went
in a few more days and when we give you the update. So.
Yep. 50 days. It'll
probably be an inverse perspective where she's at now, just given how this works.
You should never binge like that off of a juice feast.
So when you're feeling like you should...
I regret everything.
Or maybe not. It's not every 50 days. So who knows?
It was terrible.
I'm now on juice feasting day 10. I'm gonna go for a year now because I ate too much. But
bring it on.
We'll see. Yep.
Good old human experience.
Whatever's next, we'll take it on with good humor, and we'll be making more progress.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, all my posts are gonna be like, I'm doing this now, and it's the best thing ever.
It's completely the right thing, and all the things I was doing before were totally wrong, and whatever I'm gonna think different in the future is totally wrong. And
going back to carnivore and only cheap meat from Walmart.
Right. Oh dear God. But,
I found the crux there.
Yeah. But cool. Yeah.
All right, 150 days and
pretty awesome.
10 days, 6 days of reintroduction. I don't even know how to calculate that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one problem I have. I want to count. What am I counting? I can't call it reintroduction now. I can't even log it on my calendar as healthy eating anymore. It's like I've been taking for granted the stripe that's just eating healthy. So just juice feast. I'm not doing anything wrong, and now I'm like binge on unlimited amount of carbs and fats.
Yep.
Binge. Like,
Right.
no, I don't get credit for that. That's not correct in that way.
Fair enough. But yeah, cool. Good stuff. And hopefully this helps somebody.
Yeah.
Hopefully got a little information out of it. But we'll be back again in 40 days. More like 50 or 60.
Yeah.
But, you know.
Probably.
And we'll talk about
Yeah, this time we'll have to set a reminder because it's not going to be like a count that, I don't know, be able to
Yeah, true.
know. We'll have to set a reminder.
That's a good point.
All
Cool.
right. Bye.
That's it.
What the hell?
What? There's a stop button.
That's the record button.
There's a stop button before. Oh. Well, that's why we have audio. Oh my god, is it just a podcast now?
Oh no.
Oh my gosh, that's our longest so far. Now we're 45.
Do you want to just try to take like